can't believe that just happened. The dead deer. He dropped right where we had him. Yes! Oh my gosh. Holy crap. The great Hambino right here. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2023. What are you doing for Valentine's Day, David? Did you tell your wife that you loved her, your daughters, everything?
Oh, yeah. It's so we have, well, it used to be a big surprise here, but now, my oldest daughter, she's 14 and my youngest is 10. So they've outgrown like the surprise. They know, and they almost expect this now. But what I always do for them is we kind of quit going out to dinner for Valentine's Day. So we always make a really big dinner. But I used to always surprise them. I used to make like homemade chocolate covered strawberries for them, like with different sprinkles or whatever they used to like on the outside. Where now it's funny. Like actually, like 2 weeks ago, both my daughters were like, "Man, I can't wait for the chocolate covered strawberries this year." I was like, "Wait a second, who says you're for sure getting them?"
But yeah,
that is yeah. So it'll be a big steak dinner at home here. With the quote unquote, I guess not so much surprise now, the chocolate covered strawberries for I mean you're there too. You live with two women. I live with three, so it's a big deal.
Well, if you include my dog, I live with 3 women. So I got a chocolate lab that is just as needy as my 5-year-old daughter, and she's a female. I live in the estrogen ocean just like you do. So yeah, but happy Valentine's Day, everybody, out there, men, women, daughters, sons, everybody. Hopefully you guys are having a great Tuesday, and hopefully this might make your Tuesday a little better. I know it made the night that we recorded it a lot better, and I know it's gonna sound a lot better when I listen back to it today, because today's episode is with the Andy May. Now, Andy May, if you guys don't know who Andy May is, I'm going to shake my head at you. You obviously live under a rock somewhere, but Andy May could be the most humble cat, down-to-earth, easygoing guy I've ever met, and just thoroughly enjoy talking to him. And we've been doing this podcast now, I think it's been 5 years, and haven't had Andy on it. And honestly, for no particular reason other than everybody has Andy on, and everybody asked him the same questions. Like, it is what it is. They do. And that's okay. Like, just people want to know the same things from Andy, I guess. I don't know. We wanted to take a different approach, and I hope it's a little different. We're talking about Andy's year from this past year, but Andy had the worst year of his life. At the surface, it doesn't look like the worst year, but we get into the deep, dark secrets of what happened and what went down, and he's got a whole Rolodex, a list that he goes through, and it's pretty wild, and it's pretty cool. Now, I don't want anybody to fail, but a lot of these guys that we watch content from and listen to, on podcasts and everything, it doesn't look like they ever fail. But I'm going to tell you what, Andy, he lets his guard down a little bit, and he talks about a lot of stuff that happened this fall that I'm like, man, you are human just like us,
Yep.
And he even said, I want to get a shirt made for him that says, "I educate deer." He's like, I educate more deer than anybody else does. It's just his type of hunting and his style. So I don't know. I really enjoyed the episode. What did you think about it?
Man, I thoroughly enjoyed it because, like you said, a lot of people talk to him about, it's naturally that 3 to 4 day hunt that we all know Andy so well for, and that he's extremely successful on, and rightfully so. They should be asking those questions, but that's why we kind of took the approach. We wanted to go down a little bit different road, and we talk a lot about learning from failures. And when Andy had the kind of season he did, there was a lot of quote unquote failures during that, but a lot of learning points more than anything. And to hear of a guy that's kind of built the hunting career that he has, just kind of open up about those subjects. I not only even, just myself being greedy, I enjoyed listening to it, that I truly believe that all of our listeners are going to enjoy listening to Andy from this point of view.
I agree. And this is a long haul. This is over a 2-hour podcast, and we could have kept going. And I don't know. It was such a good podcast, and he talks about a story that we didn't know about from this year, and I don't think anybody but Andy's close circle knows about. And he was willing to talk about it, and I'm glad we got into it because it's heartbreaking on what happened, but pretty neat that he was like okay with sharing it. So there's a lot of substance in this podcast. There's a lot of I feel like this one's going to be downloaded a lot, but I also feel like it's going to get replayed a lot, and I know it will on my radio dial. So so that's today's podcast. I don't want this intro to go too long. We did do a question, but we did it at the end of the podcast, and we looped Andy into it. So at the end of the podcast, our question of the week, maybe that's what we're going to call it, the question of the week, maybe? I don't know. We'll do that. We put Andy in it to it as well, and he threw an answer out to us, so you'll get that at the end. But I say we get into partner reads here real quick.
Yeah, can I say one more thing before we get into the partner reads here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For everyone listening, you're going to hear this excellent podcast, 2 hours long with Andy May, and everyone sees what Andy's doing from a 10,000 foot view. We see all the animals he kills, this and that, but I've been following along of what Andy's been doing for, I was trying to think about this the other day, for at least probably 10-ish years back from the Hunting Beast forums. I thought he's really well educated back then, really well spoken back then. But I just want to say, as good as of a hunter and a bow hunter I think of Andy May, I respect him even more just a person and a dad, because getting to meet him in person and then just kind of following along like some of his family side of things, the guy is top notch. Even if you took out bow hunting aside, the guy is a top notch human. So I just wanted to say that before we jump into anything else.
Yeah, agreed. He's a girl dad as well. He's got a daughter that he loves dearly and will do anything for her. And we kind of get into that a little bit too and talk about this. So I'm going to echo what you said. Yeah, I agree. He's just a stand-up guy, first and foremost. So, okay. Let's get into this, rattle these bad boys off here. Helix Broadheads, the code is FALLHX10. Go pick up your FJ2s or FJ4s. So they came out with the FJ4 this year. It is a bleeder blade version of the right bevel, single bevel broadhead. The FJ2 does not have a bleeder. It is the right bevel, just single bevel, no bleeders. Great broadhead as well. You can also get the sharpeners also from them. So use the code FALLHX10 to save some money and get yourself some broadheads. Latitude Outdoors, I'm going to echo what we said last week. It is still going on, pre-orders right now for the new sticks. But also I want to, I didn't mention last time, is we have a code, and it's thefallpodcast, all one word. It does not work for the sticks, so I apologize there. I guess I got to know somebody to get that. But use the code thefallpodcast on their website to get any accessories or Classic 2 saddles. So you can use that code to get your stuff into saddle hunting. Like I said, any accessories. And the Classic 2 is a single panel, and it's a very comfortable single panel. Very light, very ergonomic. It's very nice saddle.
It's simple.
It is. It's very simple. And it's a good, to me, it's a good first step into the saddle world. If you want to do that, but use that code, but also go to the website, latitudeoutdoors.com, and you need to pre-order the sticks. So the new carbon composite SS series sticks are out, and you need to pre-order because they're going to start shipping around the June time frame, and they're going to ship them out as in, the order that they get the pre-orders. So get your name in the hat now so you can get your sticks coming. So go do that. Don't forget, use the Fall Podcast to get anything else you want, and you won't regret it. So that's Latitude, ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Right now, today is the last day. So if you're listening to this on Valentine's Day, February 14th, tonight at midnight, the launch code is no more. So get your Rival trail cams. It is a budget-friendly cell cam that has got the 5-year warranty, and MSRP is at $179.99. But go on there and use the code LAUNCH to save $30 at checkout. Use the code LAUNCH, but it ends tonight at midnight. So do that right away. Like I said, the 5-year, no BS warranty. It's a sweet little camera. Go check it out. And you can even look at the renders as well. So renders are a good camera also. So go do that at ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Next is Method Archery. We talked about this last week. Vector Arrows is rebranded. That's all he did, is just facelift, made it different name. Still same great quality of products that they have, but it's called Method Archery now. Go to methodarchery.com. Use the code FALL10 to save money on building your arrows. And lastly is Garmin bow sights. Go to garmin.com. Check out the watches and their bow sights. I love their bow sights. Still trying to get David to get one. But
working hard.
Let's put it this way. Okay, Garmin, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Garmin does not pay us a dime. Nothing. Okay? I love Garmin so much, and I've been shooting them since 2019, and I'm going to keep pushing them because that's how much I love this product. Don't get any reimbursements or nothing from them. I just love the people over there, their marketing team, Brandon Brinkman and Rehan. I love those guys, and they just make a kick-ass product, and I recommend you guys go check them out. Actually, 3 of my buddies just bought them, and they're 3 guys like me that squeak when they walk, and I never thought they would buy one, and now that they have them, they're like never going back to another one, they said. So almost all my close friends have them, and they really like them. So go check out the Garmin bow sights. Other than that, man, I don't think there's anything other than just thank you to everybody out there for all the support. The One Giant Mistake series is still going. We got a couple more episodes. We're going to run another one next week. We just kind of took a break here. We got them almost all recorded, but next week's is with Bryce Dickinson with the biggest buck that we've ever talked about on the podcast. And wild story.
It's a big whitetail.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I know there's a lot of deer over, or not a lot, but a couple over 300 inches ever killed. But this one's, he's knocking on the door.
He's up there.
Yeah,
he's up there.
It's a good one. But with that being said, let's get over this interview with Andy May, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. And if you guys have you want to say anything, go to iTunes. If you listen to iTunes, I'm going to show you right now if you're watching on the video. If you go to the podcast right here, scroll down, boom, 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 scroll right here, give us a rating, 5-star rating, and then write a review in there too. That'd be greatly appreciated. So thank you guys very much, and here's this interview with Andy May. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Fall Podcast, and today we have Andy May with us. Andy, thank you very much for coming on, man. It's greatly appreciated. I know we had a long talk at TAC and kind of got the ball rolling a little bit, and it's just our schedules have not lined up. And man, I'm greatly appreciated that we could do it today. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I listen to most of them, and I've been doing quite a few podcasts, and just needed to take a break. I needed to just take a break. Not that I don't enjoy doing them, but they're time consuming, and I get sick of hearing myself talk. So. But,
yeah,
I think what we're going to dive in today, I think, is unique and different, and will be hopefully helpful, to some people. And I think it'll be helpful for me, personally, just kind of going through this and reliving some of these things that happened. And, there's a lot to learn from this season.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something I talked to you about. I didn't really want to, you've been on so many podcasts, and I didn't really want to ask you the ABC questions that you always get asked, because everybody knows that. I mean, if anybody listening to this podcast, if you've haven't lived under a rock, the thing I'm going to tell you is just search Andy May wherever you can search him and learn about him, because in my opinion, I've said this and I'm going to tell you right to your face. I think you're the best DIY hunter there is. And I've learned a ton from you, and I look up to you, and I respect the hell out of you. And, you know, what we're going to get into today, like you said, is selfishly what I and David want to talk about, because I want to learn more from the mistakes you make, because we're doing the series right now called One Giant Mistake, and people
Mhm.
are loving it because I think it's different, because we don't talk about those mistakes. Nobody wants to bring up, oh, I missed a 200. Oh, I pussed one up. Like, nobody wants to talk about, but the thing is, those are the biggest learning curves in what we do and anything you do in life. I firmly believe failing is the best way to learn. And you have had after you just talked, I think you had a great year from surface, but
Mhm.
you said you had the worst year of your life, and that intrigues me because I want to know how you are going to grow from it and all the mistakes you made. That's what I want to unpack today.
Yeah, that sounds good. I appreciate what you said. I don't necessarily agree with, being the best DIY hunter,
You don't have to.
but, yeah, but no,
I'll
I
just
mean,
tell everybody.
I appreciate it. There's guys out there that are way, way better hunters than me for sure that I learned from. But, yeah, it was a, like you said, on the surface, it was a great year. I ended up tagging 4 bucks, four great deer, three of them on public land. And I mean, on any other year, that's a phenomenal year for me. And it is, I mean, I don't want to take away from those, because those were great hunts, and I worked hard for them. But behind the scenes, there were a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of mistakes. um, I had some injuries I was dealing with. I lost some deer, and it was kind of like a roller coaster of emotions. Because I, just like you guys, I live this, right? I live to bow hunt. I really do. I look forward to it. I prepare for it all year. Um, I I prepare for hunting just uh like an Olympic athlete would prepare for his event. That's how I look at, like, every time I practice, I'm working on a specific detail. Every time I scout, it's fun. I hunt because it's fun, but I also, it's like, it's it's much more than that. And I don't know why it's like that, but it just is for me. It's just part of the process, and it's a year-round thing. And I put a lot of time and energy into preparing and making sure that I'm ready and I'm shooting right, and my scouting is thorough, and I have confidence going into the season. And I did, going into the season, I had high confidence, and it just quickly plummeted, like one after another, just things just didn't go right. But yeah, man, let's get into it.
I got one thing real quick before we do start. You talk about confidence and coming into the year. Do you recall a year where you were just like not confident? I mean, I shouldn't say not confident, but just not to the point where you want to be coming into season. Like,
Mhm.
and I guess if you have had that year, like, what were you going through at that time where you were like just off? It just wasn't clicking. Like, have you ever had an incident like that?
Yeah. I mean, most years I've mentioned this on podcasts before. I feel like I do so much preparation and kind of ramping things up leading up into the season. Like, I just feel like, my 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 health and my fitness is dialed in, my shooting is dialed in, my scouting is like everything I wanted to cover, I have, and I'm just feeling really confident. So most years, that's kind of how I feel going into it. Um, but like, every once in a while, like, there's, just family stuff, or that kind of takes up some of that time in the summer, and you're just not getting to the things that you need to be fully ready. And I'm one of those guys, like, if I can't do it to the 100%, If I'm at 90, I'm just like, I feel empty. I feel like something's missing and I'm not quite there. This year, it was kind of a unique thing. So I have a torn labrum in my shoulder. I've had it for several years, and it's been giving me problems, but it never really surfaced much like in my archery. But this year, like right before the season, I was shooting great, but the more I shot, the more I started feeling unsteady and unstable in my draw arm. And then literally like leading right up to the season, I started getting some pretty severe pain.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh crap, you know what I mean? Because I'm used to I shoot, I'm not a tournament archer, I'm not a competitive archer anymore, but I prepare like a competitive archer. I practice and I try to, build a nice forgiving setup that I'm super confident in. And then all of a sudden, right into the season, leading right into the season, like my confidence in my shooting is going way down. It's like I'm getting pain, drawing my bow back. When I'm holding it back, I'm getting like some tremors and stuff. And it's just like, oh my gosh. In reality, um, I do a lot of my practice at long ranges, and when I'm working on certain things, I'm still putting them in the vitals at, really long range. So in reality, like at a whitetail distance, I'm still more than capable, but all of a sudden I feel like my performance is going like this. And it just shook my confidence. Like I felt like, 60% or 70% of what I normally was capable of. It's kind of how I felt going into it. And that's not how you want to feel going into the season,
Right.
especially when you take that preparation part so seriously. So,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of guys are gonna be like, oh, we all have shoulder pain, we all have back pain, blah, blah, blah. But for me, just the way my mind works, I wasn't at 100%. So I wasn't 100% confident.
Yeah. And, being in the game for so long, that going into the season, that you knew what that shoulder should feel like, what that confidence should feel like, or like you said, some guys may say, well, it's still good enough to kill a whitetail, but it's like in the back of your mind, you know what it takes to roll into season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know that, as good as I can shoot, in the backyard or, from a tree stand or a saddle in the backyard, I practice a lot of those realistic shots. As good as I can shoot out there, which I'm a pretty decent bow shot. I'm a good shot. But I know for me personally, um, translating that into the woods is a whole different thing. Some people are super calm under pressure and they're just like, they're dialed in and when a big buck comes in, it's like automatic. Well, I have to really work at that. I've never been the clutch guy. In fact, like, I played basketball in high school and, like if I was on the line for the game winner, like I'm probably going to miss, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was that guy.
Yeah.
So, I had some troubles early on with, with big deer and I went through a couple of years of some like really bad target panic, but I identified it quick. And now I do the work to kind of keep that, keep that buried. And I work a lot on preparing so that I'm fully confident in, in my archery and that's translated into like really, really good success, high success rates when I draw my bow back. And it's a process that I have to go through all summer long to get to that point.
Yeah.
So it's a big one for me,
Yeah. Was there any thought leading up into the season that, that you've been dealing with the shoulder injury, but it was starting to kind of creep in a little more on you? Was there any thought at all that you were like, I don't know if my shoulder will actually make it through an entire fall this year?
I very much felt like that. Yeah. I had everything dialed in, my sight tapes, everything was dialed in, my bow was shooting great. And then all of a sudden it's like, I'm struggling to get it back. And, I'm getting some shakiness and it was just really painful to draw. And yeah, I was worried about that, to be honest with you. Yeah. I thought about lowering my poundage. I thought about, all kinds of things. Am I wrecking my shoulder by pushing through this? But I practiced less to kind of get me through the season. Not as often, less arrows every time I practiced. And, that in itself kind of shook the confidence, but at least it got me through the season. I got through the season. Now I'm in some like pretty intense PT and everything else, but
Yeah.
That
trying
was
to
gonna
build
be
up.
my next question was like, how much do you shoot during the season? Are you once or twice a week usually, or you're trying to do it at least a couple arrows every day? Like, what is your routine during season?
Yeah, no, I shoot quite often. I obviously you can't always shoot. Um, maybe because of work and getting your kids to school and everything, but I try to shoot a few arrows every day. Um, and if I can't, like something happens where I can't get outside and shoot, I'll come home and like before I go to bed, like I have a bag target right here in the house and I'll just work on shot execution. So one of the main things I work on when I'm practicing, I kind of when I practice on one thing. So like
Mm-hmm.
shot execution practice is big for me. I'll pound arrows into that bag, at whatever 5 yards, down in the basement, just hundreds of arrows trying to build that muscle memory and that shot execution. So I'll do that sometimes, but it's all kind of like for me it's all part of the process and like a means to you know just performing better in the woods on a deer.
Yeah.
So but the reason I do that is because I've had experience. Like the your bow is a machine. Your bow is a machine, and you got to think of it, it's like it's constantly moving. Things move. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not talking about necessarily your rest and your sight, but like strings stretch, peeps move a little bit, cams rotate a little bit, all these little things. You get a little water in your string. If you hunt in the rain, you can go from a hot car to a cool house. All these things move minutely. Um, your average whitetail guy is probably going to take his bow. He's going to go out and shoot at a dot at 20 yards, and he's going to put it somewhere near the dot. He's like, that's good. Well, my zero is, I shoot an arrow or two or three at like 80. So if things move slightly, I know immediately. And if I'm off by like this much at 80, it really screws with my head.
Mm-hmm.
It really screws with my head because I know it's not perfect, even
Yeah.
though even though I'm not going to shoot at a whitetail at 80 yards. So
Yep.
when that happens, I'm constantly checking it, and I've learned over the years, like it's constantly moving, and you need to keep up on it. Like one thing that always happens is your serving moves, and under your
Yep.
D loop, you can get some little gaps, and things move ever so slightly. And when you move your knock end, it really affects things downrange, especially the further you get out. So I've
Yeah.
just learned to constantly keep tabs on it, constantly check it, and make adjustments accordingly.
Yep.
Yeah, that's something that happened to me. I don't know. I'd say about 10 years ago or so. I had 2 years where it was just everything went wrong, missing deer, wounding deer, not finding them, or thinking, good hits, and everything. What could go wrong did go wrong. And the best thing that happened to me was simplifying everything and really going back to the elementary steps of like almost not learning to shoot a bow again, but damn near that. Like it was, at one point I thought I needed to be the next Levi Morgan or the Lee Lakoski, and it's like, what, that's not real. It's not that it's not real. It's not relatable to me. You have to pick up some things that these guys do and relate, or, implement them yourself. And I still take that to this day, and I've changed some things. And everybody asks me why I still shoot a wrist strap release. And it's because I can shoot a thumb button really well outside, but then when it comes to moment of truth, I go to mush. And it's because it's just that's my mental capacity. Like the wrist is there. I've shot the same release for 13 years now. It's probably going to break any day, to be honest with you. And I don't want it to, but it's just one of those things that's routine. And it sounds like you're a routine guy. And I'm kind of like you in the fact that like the little bit that goes wrong, it's actually amplified. Like it just knocks you off the rails. I was the same guy. Don't put me on the free throw line. I was 63% free throw shooter in high school. I still know that to this day because I was a god awful free throw shooter. But don't put me at the line with the game online.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I tell you, for me, it's almost a little bit the opposite of what Aaron just said. When he talks about the wrist strap release, so it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I started struggling with. I was seeing inside myself that I was really needing to like slow the moment down, especially hunting, like that final moment, just kind of really slowing it down. And I kind of had to go the opposite way. I started shooting a hinge a couple of years ago, just that was my struggle. Just this, I wasn't. I mean, I know it's probably a case of target panic, but it was just always the process was just too fast, and I knew it in my head. And when it came to hunting, it was way too fast. I knew I was doing it, and I could not stop myself from doing it. And so then I went to the hinge and just really started. It just made me slow it down.
Yeah, it's a great learning tool. That's kind of what I switched to back in the day, and then eventually transitioned into a thumb, and sometimes I use a trigger release too. Now that I've solidified a good shot process, it's ingrained in my subconscious. Like I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
But I still go through the drills. I still go through the same exact drills that I use to beat target panic, just to make sure everything is solidified and stays away. Because those 2 years when I really struggled with it, I missed or wounded like 3 or 4 different big bucks in 2 years, you know. But luckily for me, it was like it came on really quick. I identified it really quick, and then I beat it really quick. So it was really only 2 years, and ever since then, it's just been so different, you know. It's been like confidence has been way higher, but
it's like you have that base and foundation of that shot process for you now.
Yep.
So at surface level, you shot 4 bucks this year, and it looks great. But behind the scenes, I'm ready to get into the behind the scenes. So it sounds like the first mistake was, or not mistake, but the first thing was your shoulder. Okay, so that was bothering you. Like what turned into the next thing that was really weighing on you, or was just you weren't feeling right? Like what was that next thing?
Yeah, so I got a big long list here.
just throws it out, just like ring.
Yeah, the season started great. I killed a really nice muley in Colorado, so everything was good there. But then I came home, and I was on to a really, really big buck in Ohio. And this is northern Ohio, where one of the worst counties in all of Ohio, and it's really rare for a deer to get to 3 or 4 years old. It's just really open. The gun hunters push everything. They're really, really efficient at killing everything. But this was a really special deer, the biggest one I've ever seen in the area. I mean, I don't really score a lot of my deer. I don't really care about numbers, but he was right up there, Boone and Crockett type animal.
Wow.
And, 165 to low 170s, somewhere in there, just a beautiful, typical. And I had glassed this deer many times. I knew where I needed to be to kill him. I just wasn't getting the wind to get into the kill tree. So I was getting the opposite wind. So what I kept doing was coming and basically glassing him from a little standing cornfield, and I can glass this little woodlot where he was bedded with some other bucks. And one day I was out there glassing, and actually I got video of this, but I was glassing, and I kind of scanned the area at first, didn't see anything, and then I was kind of sitting there just killing time, kind of looking at my phone, checking things, whatever. And then I was just every once in a while just kind of glass and scan, and I look and I see antler tips like right on the field edge, like bedded in the shade, and it was him. He was bedded right there. Wow. And everything was perfect. It was a windy day. The wind's in my favor, and there's a ditch that literally goes right to him. And it wasn't like a ditch that was clean. It was like full of stuff, so it would have been noisy getting up there. It was risky. The very next day, I had the wind I had been waiting for 3 or 4 days to get in the tree that he had walked by a dozen times in the last 3 weeks. And I made the decision to stalk him. And the reason I did that, because honestly, I just wanted to test myself. Like I am all about trying to do things that are more difficult for me. I think the safe play, the more not guaranteed, but the more guaranteed route would have been to wait for the perfect wind tomorrow, slip into that tree, and kill him as had come out like he had done so many times. But I just thought to myself, I was like, a better hunter would be able to do this, and I want to test myself. So I did, and I don't have any regrets. But I snuck in there and I got to 50, maybe 50 yards or so. And then I held up and I glassed and I could see his rack. And then I sneak up to another, I don't know, another 10 yards. So I'm roughly 40, 42 yards away from him in a range that I feel comfortable if I have a good shot. But I'm down in that ditch. And then I see a buck stand up that's with him. And I knew this buck too. And this was another giant, probably 150-inch 8, like one of the big rates I have seen. And I had the shot at this deer, and I decided I'm not shooting this deer. It's the big one or nothing. So I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of being patient, and there's no reason any deer should detect me. Well, then all these other bucks start popping up, these little like 2-year-old bucks and a year and a half. And, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh gosh, and all of a sudden, like one of the little ones starts coming out and kind of feeding into the field. And I'm down in this ditch, and I kind of put my head down, and then every so often I just kind of peek my eyes up. And the last time I peeked my eyes up and one of the little ones caught me. The big one was bedded. The other one was standing. And now this little one's on to me, and he starts walking over, to investigate. And I was like, oh God. So
here we go.
I literally sunk down into the ditch, and I was just laying on the ground like this. And, I was like, I'm not going to move for 15 minutes. I'm just hoping he's going to lose interest and nothing spooks. I didn't hear anything blow or anything. I waited about 10, 15 minutes, and I peek up and everything's gone. So I don't know if they saw him get nervous and everybody got nervous and took off. I don't know if the wind swirled. I don't know. But totally blew it. And the next day I did sneak into that tree, didn't see the deer, never got another sighting of him. I glassed all over that area and never saw him again. So, whatever. I made a mistake. I went for it. I didn't really have any regrets other than I was like, man, I probably could have played it safe. I went the more aggressive route, but that's my style, man. I probably would have chose that 10 out of 10 times,
Yeah.
So, whatever, no big deal. And then a few days later, I don't remember how many days after this was, but it was a completely different area. But I went out and I was using my my heads up decoy, and I saw another really nice buck. He was probably, he wasn't nearly that caliber, but he was a good looking deer. And I saw him out. He came out of this little woodlot, and I saw him out there, and I snuck up. I crawled up and I through the tall grass, and I set the heads up decoy. I have a little homemade stake that I made, and then I backed up, and he sees this decoy, and he starts coming. So, he was probably maybe a quarter mile away. He was several hundred yards. And he sees that, and he starts coming, and again, he comes within bow range, and I come to full draw, and I pass on a shot that's makeable for me because I think he's coming closer to give me the gimme. And he ends up coming, and the wind swirls a little bit. He catches me, and he takes off. So it's just like, all right, now two things happen that are a little aggravating.
What time of year is this?
This is early season.
Okay.
Early season. This is that second one. Yeah, I think this is all before the Michigan opener.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all before the Michigan opener.
I can't. So you used the decoy in September then, and so you're having good success with that. Yeah, and it's not an aggressive thing. It's a curiosity thing. These bucks are still bachelored up, and oh, here's a buck. Who's this? And he came over. It was more of a
I wasn't set up there necessarily to decoy a buck in. I had the decoy with me. I was in more of an observation spot, and then the opportunity to present itself. So I crawled out and set it up.
Yeah.
So I didn't go there thinking like I'm going to decoy bucks tonight, but I had it with me.
Yep.
And you know, whatever, things go wrong. You know what I mean? Hunts like that go wrong, but you start getting a few of these that happen. It's just like, okay, this is not a good
Starting to
sign.
see a trend. Starting to see a trend here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's starting to see a trend, and you're like, is it me? Or is this the way the season's going to go? Because I'm actually not used to that happening very much. I'm used
Yeah.
to things going my way. Like usually, I feel like if I see the buck and I make a plan, I'm more times than not, I come away successful.
Yeah.
So I'm not used to this happening, especially not twice in a row. But whatever, I still was like, that was a blast. It was fun.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I got a quick question for you.
Yeah. But interrupt at any time, by the way, because I keep going.
No, you're good. You're good. I'm just enjoying this, but I got a question in the fact of like, you've shot a lot of good deer in the history of you hunting, your journey, whatever. Is it now easier to, because you've probably reached some goals, you know what I mean? I've set goals for myself, like I wanted to kill a booner and was able to do that. So it's like Tom Brady in his Super Bowl. I got my Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So then it was like, it was really weird for me how a flip almost switched the year after that. I was like okay with trying way more things and I was okay with failing, if that makes sense. Has that been a factor for you, or do you think that way, I guess? Or you've obtained some of these goals. Like, are you okay with taking a little more risk? I was a very passive hunter. And it took me a while to just be more aggressive and more aggressive and more aggressive. And when I hit a couple goals, I was like, man, I got the one. This is all bonus. Let's learn some stuff. Let's try some stuff and let's fail.
Yeah.
Is that something that you went through at all?
Yeah, I think so. I think though, pretty early on, um, I I always wanted to be. I mean, from like when I think back, like my first couple of years, like I kind of learned from some cousins and some friends that had been hunting longer, but like I completely like diverted from how everybody else was hunting, like almost immediately. And I started killing good bucks when these guys have been hunting their whole life and haven't killed one yet.
Okay.
It was almost immediate. And I'm not saying giants, but like, I started killing 2.5-year-old bucks in Michigan with my bow,
Yep.
and then I started killing a lot of 3-year-olds, and then I started killing some bigger ones. And um, I had a naturally aggressive approach, a naturally like, don't sit in the same spot, don't hunt the same farm all the time, like bounce around and learn. And then as when you're young and you're excited, it's like you're talking with other guys about hunting and your buddies, and you're making friends, and like, oh man, this guy's really good at this guy's really good at this. I didn't like the feeling of that there's different styles of hunting and different techniques and different tactics, and I didn't know them, or I didn't feel confident in them. So my natural tendency was, I want to learn to do that too. And then I want to learn to do this too. And then I met a guy that killed all of his big bucks over decoy. And I'm like, oh, like teach me,
Yep.
so I'd pick his brain. Like now I want to feel confident with a decoy. And then it started branching off into like, I could see holes in my game or holes in my season where I wasn't very confident or effective. And then I had acquaintances that were really good at those times of the year. So then I started learning from them. So I always strive to be like a really well-rounded hunter, like that could hunt in a lot of different places, just kind of throw me in there.
Yep.
and figure things out. And that's my favorite way to hunt. Like that's the way I've always hunted. Like I've killed a lot of bucks, and I mean, very few are off like the same place. I was
Really?
trying to think about that today. I don't think I've ever killed more than like three out of the same area. They're
No
all,
kidding.
yeah, they're all different areas. So yeah, it's just kind of like, I don't know. That's what excites me, and that's what I get excited about, trying new things and going to new states and hitting new pieces of ground. And I I get I get a little bored, I think, if I was stuck to one place.
Yep.
But granted, like I'll see guys like, like Mark Kenyon, my buddy Mark, and some of my friends, and they own farms and they're doing some work on the farm, and they get these bucks that kind of year to year, and that's cool too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I see that and I'm like, yeah, that would be cool. And
Yep.
part of me wants that, but I can never like bring myself to like um to just do that, or like get a lease that I'm going to focus on. It's just like all I think about is all these other opportunities I'm going to not have time for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. It
So
don't at times that almost feels, and like you said, there's nothing wrong with that, sitting on one piece, watching deer grow up, or just continuously hunting them. But at times it almost feels stagnant doing that.
yeah, yeah, it's a different set of challenges, and it's a
Yep.
different a way of hunting, and it's just not my style. And I think that's kind of like, you know unintentionally, I think that's kind of how like I've developed a name for myself, sort of.
Yep.
Not that
Yep.
that was ever a goal of mine, but that's what it was. Is like I've hunted like 18 different states now, and
Yep.
I don't do like big leases or anything like that, and everything I've hunted is can be hunted by other people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Well, I
um,
think also from afar looking in and consuming a lot of content that you're doing, this is, I'm going to form my own opinion here, but everybody knows you're like a really efficient hunter and you don't get a lot of time off. So I feel like your style to adapt to any situation is key, because I don't think a guy like you could have a lease and just be okay with like, well, I got 3 days to go down to the lease and maybe put a food plot in or do whatever, or just hunt a couple stands. Like you could definitely do that, but I feel like the type you are, like you want to bebop from here to here, like, try a stalk on the ground. If it doesn't work, I'm going to keep going. Like you're keep moving, you're efficient with it. But from afar, I guess, am I wrong by saying that? But that's kind of how I see it.
yeah, no, I think that's kind of, more or less kind of the way I work through a season. I kind of have like, I was talking with Alex Gilstrom about this, but like I have like a 3-day mindset, and when I go into a hunt, it's because I've never really been able to hunt more than 3 or 4 days,
Mm-hmm.
in an area. So like there's a sense of urgency and a sense of aggressiveness and a sense of like kind of in their face approach. I
Yep.
bet you I get busted, and I bust more deer, and I get busted probably more than anybody, but I get a
Really?
lot of opportunities. You
Okay.
Yep.
know, I
Yep.
I I don't really know. It's hard to put into words sometimes, but I feel like I push and I push until I force that opportunity. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it does. Sometimes I bust the deer, but it's like I force it, and because I've been doing that for so long, um, and I've made a bunch of mistakes. Now I'm getting really good in those 3-day windows. But I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
always like really good in them. Like I was good at them to kill like a decent buck. Go out on
Yep.
out of state hunt, you kill a 2-3 year old buck, open young size buck. Well, then you start getting better at it. You start getting more fine tuned with your approach and your tactics and what you want, what you're trying to find, what to look for. And, you just get better at it. The more you throw yourself into that situation, that goes for anybody, the more they're going to get better at it. And there's a lot of guys that wouldn't even bother going on a trip if they only had 3 days. I've
Right.
done it. I did a 19-hour drive both ways to hunt 2 days this year. And so,
Wow.
And
It's wild. But
I
that's what
did
it takes though, man.
Yeah.
and I did a 15-hour drive and I only had 3 days in another state. So I'm not afraid to do that. And the reason I'm not afraid is because I've done it so many times and I've come home with a great buck.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I do feel like I'm probably, if I hunted that way, I'm probably not the guy you want to invite to your family farm.
Right.
because yes, I might kill the buck that you might say, I got this old buck, go in there and try to kill him. I might kill him or I might blow the whole farm out. That's kind of in that 3-day approach. That's kind of like, I feel like I do that a lot. Like I feel like I push into an area and I either get the opportunity or I blow it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a lot of cases.
I've got a hypothetical here, and sorry, David, before I lose this question, I got a hypothetical because this is a selfish question. So if you're that type, and let's say you do get invited to this guy's farm, or maybe let's say you have a farm, and you said you have a sense of urgency, and you're looking at a 3-day window. Are you going into that 3-day window, and you might only get 4 or 5 3-day windows on a farm? Are you going into that like 3-day window being like as aggressive as you can be, and knowing rightfully that you could blow every deer out of here, but that's what it's going to take for me to get on one of these deer?
Yeah. And
Does that make sense?
Weird.
Sorry, I might have worded that wrong.
No, it's not like I don't, it's hard to put into words because it's not like I'm thinking about like, oh, I'm going to be so aggressive and this is what I'm going to do. I just do it. I just go, and I tend to, I just tend to dive into the areas that I think are going to be best. And I kind of, every situation is different, but I tend to push in until I force an opportunity or I see what I want to see to set up, or, in a lot of cases I go too far and I end up bumping the place out. So, but I usually pick up on something that I can capitalize or build on.
Sure.
It's not like I go on every hunt, these short hunts and come home with, a big buck. It's not like that, but a very high percentage of them I do. And if there's a big gap, or not a big gap, but like 2 to 3 days, I've done really well. But if I get 4 days, I'm almost like at 100%.
Damn.
Now, granted, like I might not be as picky as some other guy. You know what I mean? So like when I go on a new area that I've never been to, like I don't have a target buck that's 7 years old that, that's 168, that I'm after. I'm learning on the fly, and I'm looking for something that, makes my heart jump, that gets me excited, or a cool hunt. And I think that's more available out there than a lot of people think.
Yes.
And yes, I've taken some great deer. I've taken a lot of nice deer. You know what I mean? Back home, I do things a little different, and there might be, some specific bucks there. I had several target bucks that I, we'll probably talk about, but that's kind of my approach on those shorter hunts, like out of state.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost safe to say that, maybe early on that when your life only offered those 3-day windows, that it could have been easily to look at it and think, man, this sucks. I only get 3 days. My buddies get 5 or 7, some get 10.
Mm-hmm.
But now, years later, that 3-day mindset has molded the hunter that you are today.
Yeah.
And we already heard that a little bit early on, that he's down in Ohio. It's the first week, and he's already talking like a 3-day window, and he's put himself into 2 opportunities. But he's not going to wait, for day 3 to come. Like that's just that mindset, just to go get it done. Right. As fast as I can get it done, the faster I can get back.
Yep.
Yeah. And it is, it's that 3-day mindset of, in a lot of cases, like, especially like locally, it's more about locating the deer through scouting.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like that 3-day mindset starts.
Yep.
Where out of state, Out of state, it's more like I'm just into a new area and I'm trying to break it down as quickly as possible and get on something that'll make me happy.
Yeah. And for everyone listening, when Andy's sitting here talking about the 3 days, you can almost bet your ass that before these 3 days, Andy's has done a ton of homework online, a ton of homework on maps. So like, the 3-day mindset, that's getting in a car and going hunting. There's a lot of work that I guarantee he's doing before those 3 days even arrive.
Yeah. I hunted, so I hunted 22 days this year. 22 days. And well, I had the failed stalk, decoy. I got on, well, there's a big long list. I got on so many big deer and a lot of target deer. And then I shot 4 deer or 4 bucks in those 22 days. But outside of those 22 days is a lot of scouting, a lot of searching. I think I told you, Aaron, at ATA, like I scout way more than I hunt. Way more. So,
well, and I've stolen your 3-day approach around home here. Like I really implemented that last year, and I hunted 13 times and killed 3 bucks. And then this year I hunted 9 times and killed 2 bucks. And the 3-day approach, like David said, I've done so much homework leading up to, like, I've got a hub scrape. I don't want to say too much about it because people will really know where it's at, but I've got a hub scrape that I know from October 10th through the 17th, it gets hit by a mature buck every year. And this year and it's midday, and well, I should say it's midday. It's like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So what I did this year is I sat from like 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock, and he didn't show up. I know he was near me because I saw him go in the timber, but it's just those things that, like, dude, I glass every morning and every night. And I hardly, it's weird to say, but I hardly hunt. I do more groundwork until it's the time. And when I know it's the time, it's like, engage, we got to go now. And dude, you've taught me that. You didn't know you taught me that, but you taught me that. And I've been way more successful than I have ever been. So
yeah, that's exactly that's exactly my style, especially around home. When you go out of state, it's just kind of like, all right, the challenge there is like, okay, I got 3 days. Doesn't matter what the weather is. If it's 90 degrees, let's make it happen. Let's figure it out.
Yep.
If it's raining, if it's super windy, like when I went to my first out west hunt this year, or not my first, it was my second for mule deer. It was like 50-mile-an-hour winds. I was like, how am I going to ever kill something in this?
Yeah.
But we figured it out, we developed a style and a pattern to hunt, to actually figure out where these deer were. And we got that buck. I shot that buck on the third morning.
Yeah.
And it felt like it was going to be impossible. It felt like I can't even hold my bow steady. Like, I have some video I sent my buddies, dude, and it was like I couldn't even. It was blowing me off my feet, right? And I was like, even if I do see one, there's no way I'm gonna hit it with an arrow. I'm gonna have to be within 5 yards of it. But then we started to figure out, like, okay, what are these deer doing in this high winds? Okay, now they're down in the lowest elevation possible, in the cracks that you can't see from anywhere. And now we're gonna get down there, and we're gonna, instead of like normal spot a deer and stalk, we're stalking the spot. We're stalking through this stuff to actually look and try to spot something. Sure. And that was the technique. And those deer were hiding out, and they were tucked in there, and that's where we got on them, so
yeah,
that's what's cool about those out of state hunts, is because you just get thrown into a new area, a new situation. I'd never been there before, and just like figure it out. But back home, just like you said, Aaron, it's more search and search and search. And then when I find a buck that I want to go after, or maybe it's sign, and I think it's from a buck that I would be interested in, then it's engage, and I'm push, force that opportunity, or, it happens like that pretty much every time, pretty standard. It's like I find a buck and I either get him killed in 3 days or I ruin my opportunity.
Yep.
But I almost always get an encounter something.
Yep. And that's the thing. It's like my encounters even went up, you know what I mean? Or my sightings of real good deer. And it's like, man, you know, it's kind of limited. I think I hunt a lot of the ground like you do, like wide open. You know, you could see your dog run for 2 days and a lot of this stuff, and you might have a little drainage that, you know, you get to work with. But it's sometimes it's hard to get close to those deer, and you gotta be you know, try some new things like the stalking thing. I've done it twice in the last 2 years and it's been successful. But the big thing about stalking is, in order to get good at it, you have to do it more. Like, it's just something you can't throw in like, you have to throw yourself in the fire and just do it, you know? And I've watched so much whitetail adrenaline, and you can learn so much from those guys. But the thing is, until you're there, and how you maneuver yourself and how you can peek up and losing deer, and how do you find them again? And it's just like, it's a patience game, and I have none when it comes to that. So
you made a really good point. You know, if you want to get good at different tactics, you have to try those different tactics. And I did that for years, where I wanted to get better with the decoy, with the handheld decoy. I wanted to get better at still hunting. So I still hunted a ton. And I wasn't really worried about like, oh, am I going to get a buck, you know, or not? I didn't worry about that. It was more about learning the tactic, making some mistakes and gaining some confidence. And now I honestly, truly feel confident in a lot of different tactics. Like if you told me like, Andy, you can only still hunt next year with your bow, I'd be like, all right, you know, cool. Like I feel confident that I can get it done that way. Not every time, not every hunt, you know, because that's hard. But I enjoy doing it. I've worked on that craft and I feel confident doing that. Or if you said, I want you to try to, you know, shoot a mature buck with a decoy, you know, I'm like, okay, cool. Because I know it can happen. And I know there's going to be some encounters where it doesn't go my way, but I know it can happen. You just got to get that right buck in that right situation. But if you're doing that every hunt, you know, every time, and you kind of make some mistakes, and you learn good setups and you know, kind of different types of scenarios where they're more likely to check that out, like your success goes up. And that's from doing it and messing up, you know, and I've done that. I've done it over and over.
Hence why we're doing this podcast today. It's all about the mistakes.
I do have a question for you, Andy. You know, when I listen to you, and you know, you're basically hunting like a Swiss Army knife nowadays, you know, very well rounded. But when you look back at a lot of your hunts and over the years, would you say that you have learned more from your failures and mistakes, or have you learned more from your success over the years?
Yeah, no, for sure your failures, you know, absolutely. They're hard to swallow. But you have to be thankful for them, because without them, you know, you don't grow. And that's how you grow. You have to make those mistakes to grow. And really, if you're never making any mistakes, if you're so safe, like, you know, I listen to some of the guys that hunt different situations, and you know, some of us where like maybe they do have a really highly managed farm, and they got these bulletproof setups, and they only go in when the conditions right, and the deer have very little chance of like getting downwind of them. That's a whole different deal. But like if you're not like pushing your capabilities, your limits, you know, you don't know what they are, right? So it's like you try to do things that seem unlikely or even impossible. And then you find out like, dang, I almost pulled that off. You know, like if I would have just done this, I would have pulled that off. You know, so by pushing and trying things that are hard and difficult, that seem like maybe against the grain a little bit, you start to learn what your capabilities are, and you start to kind of gain confidence in that. And that's how I've really grown, is like I've gained a lot of confidence in trying different things that maybe other people have been like, dude, what are you doing? You're just going to sit through that bedding area? Like, don't do that. You're going to blow everything out. You're going to educate every deer. and I educate a lot of deer.
Yeah.
I really do.
Like, what is he doing? He's got a bum shoulder and a decoy out there.
I love that he wears it. I love it where he wears it proud. I educate a lot of deer.
Yeah. Well, and
I
and
educate.
to his point, like when he said that the mistakes are so hard to swallow, and it's like, and we've all been there, right? Like in the heat of the moment when you make that mistake, it feels like the end of the world. But
Mhm.
sometimes it may not be till days later or that next week, or sometimes even in the off season when you can reflect back and really think about how you can fix that, what you did wrong, and then really learn on that for the next year and years to
Yeah.
come on top of it.
Yeah, and they're easier to accept too when you make a few mistakes and then you have some things go your way. But when
Yeah.
you when you have a lot of things over and over in a row, and then you start to question yourself, like, what am I doing? Do I even know how?
Yeah.
I I do a little app called Polo. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Polo.
Okay. No.
It's a little app. It's a little video app. So like you send a video to you can have a group or whatever, but a group of friends like your hunting group or whatever, and you hit the Polo. You can talk. You can tell how your hunt went, and then they can watch it whenever. Kind of like
Yeah.
I guess it's the same as text, but
Yeah.
we just use Polo. But I remember telling my buddy Justin Wright, because he had a rough year too, killed some great deer, but he had another rough year. But at one point in this year, I was like, I don't even know if I know how to hunt deer. Like I literally felt, I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like I feel like I don't even know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But, it was just one of those years where a lot of things went wrong. A lot of
Yeah.
things right too, but some big things went wrong. Those
Yeah.
things that are really tough. I
Yeah.
wounded a deer. I don't know if you want to keep going down the
Yeah,
list here.
let's go to the next
Let's
failure.
roll.
Let's
Yep.
keep rolling here.
Okay, so this isn't really a failure. It was more of just another thing that was immediately after those two Ohio bucks. But I went down to I went out of state on a mule deer hunt. I had 3 days, and I got on the biggest mule deer I've ever seen. And I got video of it. Talked to some people. I mean, it's right up there, like state recordish type, typical. And I saw him the first day, and I was like, it's that deer or nothing. And
Sure.
basically, I spent 3 days just glassing him because he was just across the fence onto private land every time. In fact, the very first time I saw him, he was where I could hunt, and then he crossed over, and I basically camped out on that deer. I honestly felt like I could have killed it because he was right there for 3 days, and I just ran out of time.
Yeah.
So no mistake made. I committed to that deer, but it was a tough one to swallow, and it just added to the stress. It was like I was like, I hate that I can't leave my job for more than 2 days,
Yeah.
to enjoy this hunt. You know what I mean? So it's like most guys would have 5 to 10 days. If I had that, I feel like that deer would have been dead. And it was one of those things that just started adding up. Like these two things went wrong, and now I'm pissed that I can only do 3-day hunts because of my work. So I got back into Michigan, and there was basically two bucks that what I considered were like my target bucks, and they were really good Michigan deer, probably like 4 years old, mid 140s, good solid Michigan bucks. And I spent a little time scouting, try to find this buck sign because I knew he was in this area, and I found an area that had some good sign that looked like it was from a big mature deer. So I moved in that area with that kind of 3-day mindset, and I got an encounter with that buck on the second day, and he came out of like a river bottom area, and he was coming down this like transition line, and he was coming right towards me. I thought he was going to come right into my lap. Well, at 40 yards, he turns broadside and gives me a beautiful, broadside shot. And I'm like, no, he's coming right here. So
Yeah.
I passed the shot, and I'm expecting him to come right into my lap. Well, a doe comes out in the field. He sees the doe and takes off. And so it's just like, all right, this is the second time that I've passed a shot that I know I'm capable of, that's in range, and it didn't work out for me.
Yeah.
So it's just another thing now. Now there's 4 things, right, that are just like really, really getting
Yeah.
at, you know. So
Was Andy, was that shoulder injury at all looming in your head with those
yes,
shots? Yeah.
yes, yes. And I know I could have made the shot, but it was looming, and
Yeah.
I wanted some really good
Yeah.
30 and in shots. You
Mhm.
know,
Yep.
that's kind of it. I didn't really pick a yardage, but like in the back of my head, I was like, I want 30 and in. Like I don't want
Yeah.
to be winging 40-yard shots, even though
Yeah.
I know I can do it. I've done it, but the confidence wasn't there. And
Yeah.
now these things are happening, and I'm like, dude, I only get so many encounters a year. Like that could have been my last one.
Yeah.
So the very next day, because he didn't detect me, so the very next day I dove in a little closer to where that deer came out. I had an encounter with him the very next morning. Actually came to full draw, and he came buzzing through. He was like cruising through real quick, and I had a little hole, and I grunted at him to stop, and he had walked right through the hole and then stopped, and he was behind some stuff.
Mm.
And I was just like no shot. And then I'm here at full draw, and the shoulder's starting to hurt a little bit, and then he just kind of like he starts to get a little nervous, and then he takes off. So it's just like another thing. I'm like, oh my god, like I can't win, right? I just cannot win. It's just not going to happen this year. So after that, I think I hunted for that deer maybe a couple other times and didn't see him anymore. Then there's the other target buck that I had mentioned in Michigan. One I eventually ended up killing, but I knew that this deer, just from the past, he kind of frequented this river bottom like during the rut. He would like in the previous year, he would kind of show up there at night a little bit. Like you just get like a picture of him at a scrape randomly in the middle of the night and then nothing. You'd glass for him, several days, nothing. He just didn't live there, but he would like come in and kind of check it and then go wherever he went. But then, come the rut, he was in that area, pretty heavily. And there was a great funnel in that area that I knew by the way he had kind of worked through that river bottom, I knew at least part of the time he was bedded out in this peninsula. And the way the landscape works, this peninsula comes and it kind of wraps around where the river makes a bend, and it creates a really nice funnel right there. And that was a spot where I just felt like, if I put in enough days, enough hours in that spot, I think I'll get a crack at that deer. So I was prepared because it is the rut, and often it is hard to get on a specific animal. I was prepared to like every chance I got with a decent wind to sit in that.
Yeah.
And I think it was my second time. It was my second time in that funnel. The first time I got up in a tree because the wind was more out of the northwest. Well, the second time it was more out of the northeast, so I wanted to sit kind of like on the opposite side of that.
Yep.
I went in there on November 7th. I have my saddle. I'm planning on getting up in the tree. And it's just like dead calm. And where that peninsula goes out, it's not that far. It only goes out maybe 100 yards. But I felt like everything was so noisy. The leaves were crunchy. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable, getting up in that tree. Like I feel like I'm going to make some noise. So I decided to hunt from the ground. So I get set up on the ground and I'm kind of sticking out. And I look around, there's like all these dead limbs. So I just start picking up these limbs and just sort of laying them, in front of me, kind of like this, just to create something to break up my outline. So I'm sitting there and out of that peninsula, I see a doe and a fawn come out, and they come out and almost immediately they lock onto me and they take off. Thank God they didn't blow or anything, but they just kind of trot off. They look back, and I was ducked down like this, and they're just kind of like, oh, okay. And they just walked off. So I was like, I need to build this up more. So I grabbed some more limbs, and I built like this really cool kind of makeshift ground blind that kind of broke up my outline. So I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden my focus is kind of this way, and I hear something to my right, and I hear crunch, crunch, like something walking through the leaves, and I walk. I turn my head like this, and that buck is 20 yards away, and he's closing in on me, coming from my right.
Yeah.
Not a direction I was expecting, because I thought he was bedded over there, but he was going down that peninsula. And he's walking right at me, and I'm just sitting on my butt, like in front of a tree with the stuff in front of me, and I see him, and it's not like I could do this, because there wasn't anything between him and I. It was just, I mean, I could see his feet. That's how, open it was. And I see him, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I tuck my head down like this, and I roll down to my elbow so that I'm below the makeshift ground blind. So I'm kind of like this, and I'm below it, and I'm looking, and he walks so close in front of me. I can see above the ground blind. I can see like his neck and his head. I mean, he's feet in front of me.
Oh my gosh.
Shit.
And I'm like, oh my God. And he, all of a sudden he's walking, and then he stops, and he sees that doe and that fawn must have been kind of down there lingering around. He sees them, and he starts trotting towards them. So I sit up and come to full draw, and I grunt at him, and he stops, and he's kind of quartering away. And I put it on him where I thought it needed to go, and I drilled him right in the shoulder. I thought I hit the offside shoulder, but I didn't. I hit the near side shoulder. And I knew it. Once we started blood trailing him, I was like, it's a shoulder hit. I just knew it. So obviously didn't recover him. And, after that, if my confidence wasn't shaken before, it was like, there was like none left,
Yeah.
I guess, but I want to say something too. Like all these quote unquote mistakes or things that are going wrong, it's not because of your preparation, in my opinion. It's like you're doing the right things, like we just talked about a couple minutes ago, of like you almost got to like chalk it up, feather in the cap, like fuck, I did it right.
Yeah.
And yeah, the shot execution could have been a little different. I get that, or that could have been a mistake, but man, you're putting yourself in all these, like you're on like encounter number 5. I work for one a year, you know what I mean? And it's like, you're on number 5. So like your preparation is like top notch still. And I know it's something that's really hard for me to overcome. Like I missed a deer a couple years ago, did everything right, knew he was probably going to come by this tree. I knew where he was bedded. He comes by and at 46 yards, and I felt really good with the shot and shot over his back, and I was so upset. But then like I was sitting in the tree, and I'm like, man, stop being mad. Like you did everything right to this point to get into this situation. You can work on the shot execution. So like, man, like I know you're really hard on yourself, but like you are doing things very well. It's just bad luck. You know what I mean? It's just like one of those things. It's just like, damn,
Yeah. And that's true. Like I had I had put myself in position to have several good deer down by this point. And I don't have any mule or any whitetails down. Yeah. So it just was, it was the accumulation of everything. It was the shoulder pain. It was the lack of time to hunt. It was a lot of stuff just adding up. And after I hit that one, that's the first time I've hit a deer in the shoulder in 20 years. And it was really tough, man, because honestly, that was the one buck I wanted. I he was actually, I said 2 4-year-olds, but this deer I'm quite confident was 5 years old. Just from the picture I had of him last year, I'm pretty sure he looked like he was a 4-year-old deer. And I don't get many opportunities at 5-year-old deer in Michigan. I think I made a post, like I feel like, although sometimes you don't really know how old they are, so maybe I have killed some that were that age, but I feel like every 5 years or so, 4, 5, 6 years, there's one that actually makes it to 5. Yeah. But four, yes, there's obviously 3-year-olds and stuff, but like that 5 seems like a really tough age to get them to around here.
To put yourself in this situation, like at this day, this just happened. How much pressure do you put on yourself? I talk about pressure a lot and self-inflicted pressure. Like, what are you feeling like right now? You blood trail lister, you can't find them. I mean, this was middle of the rut, right? Gun
Yeah,
season's going to start happening. So basically our bow season's going to be over on the night
yeah,
of November 14th. So like, how are you feeling mentally at this point?
yeah. I was really low, especially after wounding that one. I
Mhm.
would felt much better missing him. I don't do well with hitting an animal and just wounding it. I really don't. It affects me to my core. I mean, I really feel like a failure when I do that. Especially there was nothing hard about that shot. I mean, it was 20 yards quartering away. Yeah, it was intense. Yeah, it was on the ground. But no excuses there really. But as far as like the pressure I put on myself, I mean, I guess I do put a little pressure on myself, but it's nothing that I'm ever like super stressed about. I've
Okay.
killed a lot of deer. Like I don't feel a need to like kill a buck or kill a bunch of bucks or anything. I don't really. But one thing that was different this year, um, I was asked by Meat Eater and Wired to Hunt to do like these little updates,
Mm-hmm.
and if anyone knows me, that like my friends know that like I have no interest in filming my hunts. I have no interest in being in front of the camera. Like I don't want to do it. But it was I felt like it was a unique opportunity. I mean, it's a big company. I have some friends there. Of course, I want to help them out. I also felt like maybe it's a way to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. Um, and honestly, it felt kind of painless. Like, they're not asking me to film my hunts or send a cameraman with me. Just give some updates. Okay.
Right.
So, I agreed to do it. And by doing that, um, it did add a little bit of pressure because like now, like I'm talking on Wired to Hunt, and telling them my plan or what I'm seeing. And it's like, yeah, there's more pressure added to it. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like that at all. Because it took away some of the purity of my hunt and my focus. Um, so I do enjoy helping people and I do enjoy talking about hunting, and even like those little clips like I was putting on Wired to Hunt, like I send those to some of my buddies, like Justin Wright and I, or my buddy Luke. Like we send that kind of stuff to each other so that we can learn from each other.
Sure.
And but that's different than having thousands of people seeing it and then
Yeah.
getting all these messages on Instagram. Did you get them? Like, what happened? Just tell me what happened. And I'm like, oh my
Just
gosh.
tell me. Just tell me. People are wild. People are wild.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's so I can see where that would be a little bit of weight on your shoulders this year, Andy, where like, you've been debating on whether or not that's something you'd be interested in, and then you take on that role, and like people know who Andy is, and so they start seeing these videos, but in the back of your mind, like what kind of season you're having, but you're having to like kind of tell the world like the positive what's really going on, but you got the weight of your season on your shoulders.
yeah, and I was really open. I was really open about a lot of these mistakes, and I'm happy to tell them. I'm not afraid to
Yep.
look like I make mistakes. I make a ton of them. I tell people that all the time. Like I I do like so I do think that, and I had a lot of messages of people saying like it's refreshing. Like I hate that happened for you, but it's refreshing to hear that
Sure.
you make mistakes, because sometimes it appears like you don't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, gosh, I make a ton. I
Yeah.
do.
Right.
I really do. So yeah, so you can see, this list is starting to get rather long of just things that just kind of didn't go my
I
way.
don't, I don't mean to laugh, but it's just, yeah, it is refreshing because that's why I like doing this, because even like Jake Bush, I have discussions with Jake Bush, and it's like, from the surface look at it, it's like you guys are successful on every hunt, every sit. Really, you guys, like you said, you guys are making mistakes more than anybody out there. You're
Yeah.
just like all of us. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It is.
Sometimes I wonder if I don't make like the most mistakes because of the way I hunt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it does lend to more opportunities. Like I get encounters. I really do. My style is conducive to getting encounters, and then I've gotten good at making good on those. But I also make a lot of mistakes, and I also educate a lot of deer, and I also blow a lot of opportunities because of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
so right there. I mean, the three biggest bucks. You know, a darn near Boone and Crockett in Ohio, potential state record. I ran out of time on. My two target Michigan bucks that were the biggest, oldest bucks that I had to hunt. And I have nothing to show for it. And in fact, I have a wounded deer out there somewhere where I don't even know where he's at.
Right.
And then to top it all off, work stress and everything else was starting to really ramp up. So this is interesting and was tough to deal with. But November 1st through the 9th, I only had 3 hours in the tree.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, 3 hours in the tree, total. But that was with it between 2 days. The first time I hunted for that buck, and then the next day I was about an hour. But yeah, it was like, it was tough because I just couldn't get out there. I had family obligations, work obligations, and it was just like you said, gun season's coming. And for me, a lot of cases, like that's kind of feels like the end of the season for me.
Oh, 100%.
I can agree more. Yep.
Yeah. I'm not a big gun hunter. I actually, I like gun hunting, but I just love bow hunting. I just love it. And things get really hard after November 15th. So anyway, so November 15th comes, and I say to myself, I'm going to go and get in that river bottom. I'm going to get high in a tree, and all I'm looking for is that buck that I hit in the shoulder. And I just want to make sure, put a sit out there and just make sure he's, if he's around, I can put him down. If he's not, maybe he's moved on and he's living his life somewhere else. Well, just freak thing. That morning, out the river bottom, I see a doe, and then all of a sudden I see a large bodied deer. And then he kind of reveals himself, and it's like freak, giant. I don't know what he was. I know he had some splits. I know he had incredible mass. I don't even know what to guess this deer was. I had no idea he existed. It was complete fluke freak thing. But he was a giant deer, one of the biggest deer I've ever seen. If he's right up there with the biggest deer I've ever seen.
Wow. And we're not talking just Michigan. We're talking whitetails everywhere for you.
Yeah. I mean, he was right up there. It's hard because he's a ways off. I don't know exactly, but when you see,
Yep.
He's top 5 deer I've ever seen. Could have been number 1, could have been number 5. I don't know.
Damn.
Yeah.
But he was big. He was real big. And I had my gun. I had my 450, and I think I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just not a very good gun hunter. I don't think. I never have been. I don't know. But anyway, I could shoot a gun, right? So I get him in the crosshairs, and I'm waiting, and he kind of comes out, and then he goes back in the thicket, and then he comes out, and I'm waiting for a good shot. Well, he's right along this river, and the river serves as basically the boundary, and across that river is private land that I can't access. So he's a good 70 yards from the river, and I'm like, I gotta dump him right there. So finally he comes out a little bit. The doe comes out. He comes out a little bit. I put the crosshairs on him. I'm trying to hit, the kind of the high shoulder, drop him there. I've done that a few times. And I do. I pull the trigger. I'm steady as can be. I got a great rest. I let my heart rate go down, and I slowly squeeze. Boom, goes off, and he just drops. And I'm like, yes, that's
oh my gosh.
I don't have any big gun bucks. Like I just, you know, I think my biggest gun buck is like 145 or something, like nothing real big. And I don't have very many gun bucks in general, so I was kind of pumped, you know, like finally got like a big buck with my gun. And I actually called my buddy, a guy I normally call, and I was like, man, I think I just shot a monster. And he's like, oh man, tell me, you know, I was telling him about the hunt. And then I look up there and I see movement. And so I'm like, let me call you back. So I look and I get my binoculars up and I see his head's up. And he's kind of like, it looks like he's doing one of these. And he's moving around. So he's like down and then he's up. And then he's down and then he's up. And he's not really standing, but he's, you know, then I'm like, oh my gosh, did I spine this deer? Like, I don't know. So I'm like, I got to get another shot in him. So I get down and I shoot and it hits him. At least I think it hits him. He takes off and he runs into the river bottom, and then he gets to that river and then it's like splash, splash on the other side. And then I just see him go down, thrashing around, and then nothing. So I had eyes on him for like the next 45 minutes and never saw anything move.
Yeah.
So I did what I was supposed to do, and I contacted, you know, the landowner, and I told him what happened and asked if I could recover him. And basically he said no. You know, he said what he told me was if that deer had the strength to cross the river, then he's not dead.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, it was just I was kind of like beside myself, you know. You know, that I say that story pretty nonchalantly, but it was it was tough, man. It was tough to deal with everything that had happened, kind of like coming to a head, you know, on that. You know, that was tough. I left out a very important date. That was November 13th. I did shoot my first Michigan buck.
Okay.
I shot a nice 3-year-old deer. I forgot to leave that out because I only made the list of the bad stuff. But that was a very important date, and it was probably a buck that if I'm being honest, probably normally wouldn't have shot. But I told myself, you know, I need a good clean kill. You know, I need a clean kill. And if I get a respectable buck that gives me a good 25-yard shot, you know, I'm going to take it. And I did. And I made a great shot on him. And it felt really good to get just a good, clean kill. I felt confident with the bow. And then this thing happened with the gun. And, you know, did I make a mistake there? I don't know. You know, I missed the mark on the first shot, you know, enough where he was able to move, and you know that first shot should have put him down. But you know, it was rough. It was
when
tough.
did you call the landowner? When did you call the landowner? Were you in the tree?
No, I got down and went back to the vehicle, and then I actually drove up to his house. He wasn't there. I left him a note. And then I had his number, and I called and I texted, and I texted a few times, and it said red, and he wasn't responding.
Yeah.
And then I went up there again, and you know, he wasn't answering me. And then finally, he answered me via text, and that's what it was.
So, and I guess I don't know the rule in Michigan, but like, did you try to call the DNR officer to possibly?
Yeah.
Like, what else did you try to do?
I called the DNR and I explained the situation. They basically said there's nothing they can do.
Oh my gosh.
So how approximately how far onto that landowner's land do you think that buck, when you've last seen him, how far onto there was he?
He was right across the river. So like where he crossed the river, I had a very clear view. Like when he got to the other side, I had a very clear view, and everything that I saw indicated that he went down for good, did his little kicking that they do, and then nothing. And that's all I have to go on, you know. So it was, it was, it was tough, man.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was just
And
a tough year, it was just a tough year to, a lot of things added up, and it was just like, like I explained earlier, it was a dark year. It was
yeah.
it was an unenjoyable year, even though I had some really good success. There were moments of enjoyment, but
Sure.
it was
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, I got a question for you, Andy, and all of us here have families, and I'm kind of interested, after the 15th, and you're probably, you just came off that kill on the 13th, and now the 15th happened. You have all this stuff on your shoulders adding up. How were you kind of balancing all that going on, but with like your home life also, and try not that to let affect, your family.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I've gotten better at that over the years.
Yeah,
I've certainly let some of my uh, emotions and moods kind of spill over into like home
yeah,
life in the past, but I think I've learned a lot from that.
yeah,
Um, you know, I I I was getting to the point now where um, I was almost getting like I almost felt like numb to this. You know what I mean? Like everything was happening like this. I was almost feeling like numb to it. Less like, I would come home and I would just completely detach from everything hunting.
yeah,
Yep.
And I'm sure I wasn't like, I would tell Lisa, what happened. I was just like, I can't believe this. And she's just like,
yeah,
man, I'm sorry. And then I just kind of did the family thing and just tried not to let it impact that. So I think I'm better at that now than I ever have been in my life, being able to
yeah,
detach. And that's one thing I can say is that I've always I've always prioritized the family. And
yeah,
that's a big reason why I hunt so little.
yeah,
And I've kind of developed that style because I've made those mistakes, in
Yeah.
hmm,
previous
Sure.
relationships and stuff. And, back when I was younger, before I had my daughter, but my daughter changed everything for me. There was like, I don't feel like I felt like I did right by her since the day she was born. I
yeah,
never prioritized hunting. I was never gone for more than 4 days. Like I was always, always there. Don't miss games. Coached her through all her. I just don't believe in doing that. But prior to her, I've certainly prioritized hunting over some relationships, and I've had to, learn the hard way a
yeah,
lot.
yeah,
So it to say that it's not like I was the most jovial guy at home after all this stuff
yeah,
happened, but I tried to just keep it cool and be myself and try to do the best I could. But deep down, it was hard. It was always in the back of my mind and kind of
yeah,
eating at me. I could be good when I was with them, but then like on drives and at work and stuff, it was just constantly eating at me.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
No,
especially losing that deer.
yeah,
Oh
yeah, and
yeah.
I really like that answer, Andy. And the reason I asked that because I think that all of us at some point go through that. We're like in the heat of that moment, or after that, that long grueling season, where it's so easy to be frustrated. And you got to
Mhm.
remember, like the people at home, like they're in your corner cheering you on, and it's easy for us to take that home and it pour off on them, and then they get a bad taste of it too.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Now,
go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna ask, you hunt so little, but with everything that was happening this season, like, you were after that 15th, were you feeling like a little bit of a burnout also, but not from like the amount of time you were hunting, but just all the circumstances also?
Yeah. In fact, after I lost that one, I took, well, until around Thanksgiving, like I just I didn't even want to hunt.
Yeah.
I didn't hunt any more days with a gun.
Yep.
Um, I tried, I made multiple attempts to, try to recover that deer,
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
window,
Yeah.
so it was just kind of like, it took the wind out of my sails, but
Yep.
um, I decided like, it got closer to Thanksgiving and then I was like, well, you know, I don't want to not hunt the rest of the season, so I need to get back out there. So I actually shifted my focus down to Ohio, and I started hunting a completely different area. Started my whole process again of just searching for a buck to go after, and ended up getting eyes as I was doing some glassing. I ended up getting eyes on a really tall racked 8-pointer. Seemed to look like a good mature deer, probably like a 4-year-old deer. And I was like, that's a cool deer. He's like probably mid 130s. Mm-hmm. It was really neat too, because he was really narrow, but he was really tall. And then the one side is just incredible. And then the other side was like a mini version of that, but it was still really nice.
Yeah.
He just had some cool character. But just probably some of the longest G2s that I've ever on any buck that I've ever killed. So he was a neat deer, and I was like, that's a cool deer. I'm going to try to get that deer. So I started hunting him, and just kind of continued. I got on this deer. In fact, in a week span, I actually came to full draw on that buck 3 times. And never released an arrow.
Wow.
And it was just always, it was just always things that just kind of went in his favor, like, he's like, he's about to come right through an opening, and then all of a sudden he stops right before the opening, and then he bursts through it after a doe, or, he's coming through too quick, chasing a doe. And then like the one time he came by at like 12 yards, and I'm like, Matt. And he just kept going. And then he stops perfectly broadside at 15 yards, but I got no shot at all, because he's behind a whole big tangled nest.
Yeah.
And it was just things like that. And it was super fun chasing that buck, because I feel like any other deer, I probably would have blew that deer out. But I don't know if he just like didn't sense me, just wasn't picking up on my scent. But I was like all over this deer. I mean, I was really pushing the envelope on this deer, and I was like, I couldn't believe that I kept seeing him and kept getting these encounters.
Yeah.
And then the last one, I actually didn't get to full draw on him, but the last time I saw him, he came through, and he was too far away, but he came through this little drainage. It's basically, it's not hill country, but it's kind of like rolling hills, not like steep hill country, but kind of like rolling hills. And then there's these drainage ditches that go down. They're not deep. They're maybe 80 feet, 60 to 80 feet, something like that. And he was basically in the same drainage, day in and day out, at least coming and going, because it was full of does. And, I think he was just like, he was locked into that area, like towards the tail end of the rut, trying to find the last doe. But he ends up walking to, well, it would have been to the west. And I had never seen him go that west. And it's just like, all of a sudden he decided to like leave this drain. He was always like where I was set up. He was always like there or to the east. And all of a sudden I see him go, he starts heading west. There's nothing over there but like a bunch of open fields and some little woodlots. And I hear him go over there, or I see him go over there. And like 20 minutes later, I hear a gun crack off. And I was like, holy crap, like right over by where he went. And it's not gun season. And I don't know for sure. I never saw that deer again, never got a picture of him again, but I think he was poached.
Sure.
Dang.
And so then I was just like, like
what is going on?
After the one being poached, all the boxes have been checked for the season.
Yeah,
exactly.
It was like,
just crumble the paper up and throw it.
They've all been checked. We're good to go.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I haven't really told that to a lot of people, because I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
He totally could have just been done in there and just like, I'm off, and there could have been a guy shoot, but he came right from over there. There was a house over there. I don't know. But regardless, I didn't get him. And he was, as far as I could tell, he was gone, and he hadn't returned. I kind of placed some cameras around, kind of hoping to pick him up again, and never did. But then, I took the rest of that time off, I was pretty much done after that. And I actually didn't think I was going to hunt anymore the rest of the season. It was just a lot. And I was, like you said, I was a little burnt out. And I had told my buddy this. I was like, I just want the season to be over.
Yep.
Because I felt, I'm just like you guys, we're hunters. Like we have this draw, like we should be out there, we should be pursuing. But I really wanted it just to be over because of everything. It was just weighing heavy on me, like wounding that deer, losing that deer, this one potentially getting poached, screwing up on the booner, screwing up on the decoy buck, all these things. And it was just like, I'm done. I'm over it. And I wasn't having fun. And it was like the day like before, maybe a couple days before the end of our gun season, which our gun season, when I say the end of our gun season, like December 12th is like our last firearm day, I think, for a buck, if I remember correctly. But it was like, I don't know, the 10th or 11th or somewhere in there. But I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna go out and try to get a doe with my bow before the end of the season just to boost my confidence. And I knew that was going to be challenging. So I started thinking about places to go, and I was like, you know what? I said, I think I'm going to go back to that river bottom where I hit that buck in the shoulder, just because I was like, that deer never left my mind, because honestly, I thought that he probably was alive.
Mm-hmm.
And, I got kind of, I did try to like search for that deer somewhat, unsuccessfully. And I just kind of felt like he wasn't in that area, but, just something in the back of my mind just told me to go there. Just like, maybe we'll see him out in the river bottom. And I thought, man, if I could just see this deer and know that he made it, like that would feel so good.
Yep.
So I went out there, and I ended up setting up in a spot where, he had been prior, like he had been working through this area prior, not expecting to see that deer, necessarily, hoping to, but I was fully willing to shoot a nice doe if the opportunity presented. But in the back of my mind, I just kind of was like, if he's in here, like there's a good chance I'm going to see him out in the river bottom.
Yeah.
So I'm setting up, and or I'm in the tree, and I'm set up, and it's, you're thinking like last day of gun season, if you see anything, even a doe, it's gonna be like last light.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was like an hour and 20 minutes before dark, and I look out and I see this big heavy white rack, and it's kind of doing this, and it's walking towards me, and I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm dreaming, right? So I get the binoculars up, and I look, and I'm like, that's him. Like, holy crap. And he's not only like up and moving, he's like coming my way, like as if it was fate,
Yeah.
And no, I'm not giving myself any credit on this hunt. Like I know this deer was there. I didn't, it's not like I had some, not like I glassed him and knew he was coming through this area. It was simply a hunch of what I thought he might do if he was in the area, and what, kind of the area he was in the past, like later on in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, man, I think this is my feeling. I think when I hit him in the shoulder, he left somewhere. Yeah. And then I think the gun pressure from those areas, and by me not hunting this area, he got pushed back in.
Okay.
Sure. That's my feeling. And, that was home to him for like, the rut kind of into that late season time frame. He had shown in the past that that's kind of where he was. And I look, and he's coming, and he's got a limp, and I'm like, that's him, and I'm just like, I have my bow. I took my bow out because I was, intending on taking a doe. And my first thought was, why didn't I bring my gun? Why didn't I bring my gun? Because I thought, no way he's going to come within bow range. But sure enough, like I said, just like it was fate, here he comes, and he ends up coming, right in front of me, and just gives me a beautiful, like 22-yard shot. And I saw him coming from so long, and he never broke out of good cover. He was always in thick cover, but he was very, very cautious. But he was working his way towards like some cut cornfields that were kind of a ways down. And I was like, man, I think this deer's in rough shape. I think he just has to feed, That's kind of what my gut feeling was. But he gave me a beautiful 22-yard shot. I came to full draw, and it was weird because I had a sense of peace. When I saw him coming, my adrenaline was really high at first, and it went down to like almost nothing.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is supposed to happen.
Meant to be.
This is supposed to happen. And I was just beside myself, like so thankful that I, was going to get an opportunity at this deer. And I was remarkably calm, and I made a perfect shot. He runs off, piles up. And, just the probably the best feeling I've ever had is shooting a deer. And he's not even close to one of my biggest, but man, he's right up there with probably my most meaningful buck. Like I love that story. And it's cool. It's funny that I love it because, I'm the first one to tell everyone, like, I'm lucky that I got a shot at him the second time. The first one I think was skill and some good decision making. The second one was just simply a hunch, a lot of luck involved. And it worked out. The crazy thing, I walked up to recover this deer, and immediately, of course, I want to see like where I hit him in the shoulder, and I see it. And it's healed over. It's got like a new layer of skin on it. And I kind of was like rubbing it. I just wanted to feel it, and then it popped. Like it popped right open. And I was like, yeah. And then it was like so thin. I just put a little pressure on it, just like split open. And then I started looking. This deer had taken a frontal shot from, I don't know if it was I didn't investigate a ton. I don't know if it was like a slug or an arrow or an antler hole, but he had a hole like this in his chest.
Wow.
Jeez.
And so this deer had been shot, or has 3 holes in him, 2 from me. And I was just like, gosh, what a warrior, what a warrior. But yeah, just such a cool feeling, a great way to end the season. I felt it was a very bright light at the end of a dark season for me. And I feel bad saying that because I know some guys didn't even have an opportunity at a buck. I get that. I was very fortunate, but just a lot of things going on in that season that kind of stacked on top of each other that made it tough for me personally.
Well, sure. And you can hear it in your story, Andy. Step by step. Like I was feeling those moments with you, man. Like I was like put myself in your shoes or your boots, and it's like that's heavy. That gets heavy.
Yeah. You think like you might have 1 or 2 of those things happen like every 5 years. But I had a series of them happen, in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a couple other things like I feel like for whatever reason, I was making some, whether it was overconfidence, laziness, or what, but I feel like I was making some very beginner mistakes, like in my setups. I was getting detected moving a lot. I felt like almost every hunt I was alerting deer. Even when I would get in undetected, I'd get up in the tree and like deer were blowing at me. Like every hunt, it feels like every single hunt. I would say like 90% of my hunts I was getting blown at, or I bumped deer, or I alerted deer. And sometimes those encounters still happen, but like those things were happening, and I was just like, dude, I'm sloppy, like I felt sloppy, and I haven't felt like that in a very long time. Now, granted, like you said, Aaron, like I put myself in position to have the best season of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a good season, but there was a lot left on the table there that I should have converted on, which would have been, could have been potentially, the best season of my life by far.
Yeah.
Do you have?
And I was gonna say, and you know, and maybe this is just the way I think, but you know, growing up and being passionate about some of the higher end whitetails and being from Michigan, it's like we almost have this mindset where it's like you can't afford a mistake, you know, because like
100%.
most of the time, like when if you make that mistake, sometimes here in our home state, that was your chance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's, you know, and there's certainly other states that are very difficult and other people that have difficult situations. But like I hear like some really good hunters on other podcasts and stuff, and they, you know, it's just everybody's situation can be so dramatically different. And I hear
Yeah.
like some guys talking about, you know, they were, you know, they were seeing these 140-inch deer that they were going to pass on the next year or whatever, or he just wasn't the one and all that stuff. And it's just like it's never like that for me here, you know, it
Mm-mm.
just never is. It's just like you're just trying to find that one. And granted, they are too. They're trying to find that one that might be
Yeah.
170, and then they're, you know, those 150s and 140s are like the smaller deer. Well, our smaller deer are like 1.5 and 2.5,
Yeah.
you know.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, and you do feel like you get that one or two chances a year, and you just can't afford to make a mistake. And I just felt like I made a bunch of them. And a lot of those examples weren't necessarily mistakes, just things going wrong. But it was like, you got to understand, each of those hunts, I was alerting deer, I was bumping deer, I was getting detected in the tree by does, and you know, and I'm just like, gosh, man, like I need to, I'm gonna really reevaluate, um, you know, and look into my setups and some of these things, because I feel like I maybe have developed a sense of overconfidence.
Mm-hmm.
I can go in and
Yep.
hunt them from the ground, and I can go in and hunt them from, you know, 6 feet up, and that's what I do a lot of times. You know, I'll just go in and hunt from the ground or from 3 feet up or 6 feet up. And I just, I think the confidence was high. And then, you know, it's just really knocked it down a little bit. And it's like, okay, I got a little sloppy with some things,
Yep.
you know, I really did. And, you know, I'm going to address those. And I'm thankful to have a season like this, honestly, now that it's over, because it shows very clear that there's some room for improvement. And that kind of excites me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it definitely humbles you. You know what I mean? It makes you not feel invincible. Not that you were, but you know, it you need those sense of those instances that are just like, dude, you're, you know, take a step back here. You're not, you know what I mean? I have that too. It's like, you know, you go in an area and it's just like, I've done this a million times, and you get comfortable. You almost get complacent in a way, and it's like you almost need those wake up calls, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Wild mature animals will humble you real quick.
Yeah. And I definitely feel humbled. I don't think I ever was like, I never felt like I was like cocky about a season or anything, like, to myself. But
Mm-hmm.
I certainly I feel confident when I enter the woods. I really do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, as these things happened over and over, I started feeling, I started feeling, even if I get that encounter, it's not going to work, because I
Yeah.
was getting the encounters, but I started feeling like even if I put myself in the right position, I still can't make it work.
Yep.
So I
What are
don't
you
know.
gonna do? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I hope, you know, I hope that there's maybe some younger hunters out there. I know experienced hunters are gonna hear this and yeah, that's, you know, that's hunting, you know, and it is. But I hope some of the younger hunters can understand and hopefully get that, like, even guys that have been doing this a long time, you know, we make mistakes, and it's okay to
Mm-hmm.
make mistakes, but you got never let a mistake go, you know, without learning from it. You know,
Yep.
use it
Yep.
to be better. And I'm certainly going to look at a lot of these things and try to correct them, you know, going into the next year.
Yep.
But yeah, we all do it. Even really successful hunters go through patches of, you know, where their confidence is shaken. And I talked with a guy. I don't want to say his name, but um, you know, he's extremely accomplished hunter. shoots some giants, like, down in Ohio and in Illinois. And he reached out to me and he told me, he's like, I deal with target panic, and he's like, I really, struggle, and I have struggled. And, this is a guy that you would think would be ice cold, and, we talked about it, and, I told him some of my, journeys with target panic and how I beat it and those kinds of things. So, even the most accomplished hunters out there it's a hunting is like at least for me, it's a fluctuating thing. You kind of feel on top of the world sometimes, and then it can humble you, and then you climb your way back up. And, it's just part of the process. You got to take the good with the bad.
Yep.
It's definitely a good learning year for me.
Yeah. I always try to, I tell you, not to go off on too long of a story, but a quick story here is my youngest daughter asked me one time, and she said, Dad, do you think you're a good hunter? And I thought about it for a second, and I says, you know what? I'm not a good hunter. I don't think of myself as a good hunter. I don't think of myself as a great hunter. I just want to be a student of the game. You know what I mean? Because I feel like those times, and if I ever start feeling like that, that's shit goes wrong at that. Like I just always wanted to learn. And I think that, when we sit here and talk about mistakes, I've said this on the podcast a lot. And I preach this to both my daughters. I'm always just telling them, like, it's never a mistake if you learn something from it and grow from it. Like if you just have a mistake and you don't do anything with it, it's probably just a mistake at that point. But do something with it, learn from it.
Yep. Yeah, that's great advice.
Andy, what are you gonna do? You said you're gonna address some things going into next year, but I want to pick out one thing, like getting picked in the tree or something like that. Like, how are you gonna address that when that's something that you need to like do out there during hunting season? So like how do you break something like that down in your setup and try to stay mentally on the ball with trying to like really fix that? Like what are some things you're gonna do?
Yeah, I feel like I was just getting really complacent, like with my tree selection and setups. Like I just felt like I can make this work, like not really taking into account like maybe the tree doesn't have adequate cover, but I just felt like I would just make it work at crunch time, and because that's what I've done. Like I set up in some really weird ways. Like a lot of times I'm hunting from the ground, or like literally 3 feet up off the ground, with my feet on like a saddle platform, and I'm just hiding behind the tree. I do that a lot. I don't get up. I'm certainly capable of getting up high, but there's a lot of times, there's times this year where if I had taken the time to get up high and get where the better cover was or out of sight, I would have killed. And, I need to put a little more thought into that like I used to. I think I just felt like, I'll just I'll make it work. And, there was a lot of times this year where I got busted and it didn't work because I just didn't take the time to do that. And it's a rookie mistake. I mean, that's like 101, So, just going, a lot of this is going back to the basics, going back to the basics, some things that, maybe you tend to overlook as you get more experience, like the simple things that really can get animals killed, and just staying undetected. I mean, that's one of them. The shoulder thing, I'm going to really work on strengthening, my shoulder. I've been working really hard at it already, like working with a physical therapist out of Ypsilanti that works with like a lot of high level athletes, and so I'm doing some things that are like kind of outside the norm. And he knows, he's like, this, I'm looking at you like a professional athlete, and this is your sport.
Yeah.
So I know what you want to do. And I don't want that to impact me again. And I want to be able to, use a vertical bow, like well into my old age. I don't want to be a crossbow guy,
Yep.
So I'm going to work really hard to be able to maintain that. Obviously we got to put more attention into the shooting and the shot selection. One thing I did learn, and I know this, but I think because of my shoulder injury and because of the confidence, I was really looking for those gimme shots. But part of the reason I've been successful is that I have been able to make those tough shots.
Mm-hmm.
Not risky shots, but makeable shots that are challenging, but I'm able to do it consistently because I practice those. And I've mentioned this to Tony Peterson. Like I kind of design my practice um in a way where I am like practicing um certain shots and certain scenarios that are really almost over the top challenging, so that when I do get these routine shots in the whitetail woods, they're a piece of cake. And when I do get those shots that were once, you know, challenging but makeable, it's a no brainer. They're automatic,
Right.
So it's kind of like, I think we use the analogy of, you're going to run a marathon, which is 26 miles. You don't train for a marathon by running 10 and then 15 and then 12 and then 8. No, you should train by running, 50, 36. So that 26 feels like a piece of cake. So
Yep.
I practice shots, although part of my archery practice definitely is just form, shot execution, aiming drills, um, fine tuning the arrow for forgiveness and whatnot. But then once I get past that, it's all about realistic shots, difficult shots, squeezing through little holes like this, really long shots, off balance. I might get on a rock where my feet are really uneven, and things where my aiming and my core and everything is challenged, so that when I'm faced with those in the woods, I'm capable.
Mm-hmm.
And I missed some great opportunities because I passed makeable shots that, yeah, certainly are a little challenging, but they weren't risky shots. They weren't through brush. And yeah, maybe I'll kill him, maybe I won't. No, it was broadside. He's standing there. He doesn't know I'm there. And I thought he was going to come closer. So you take that first available shot that you can make.
Right.
And that's a big one. I missed out on some really, really good opportunities there. So, and I know that rule. I mean, I know that, but it was just, the confidence thing, it was just affected everything down the line,
Yeah. That's something I've been instilled in. My dad kind of instilled that, like that first shot mentality that shot you can take. I got a lot of flack for that buck I shot in Ohio in 21. I shot in full frontal at 11 yards, and and I'm not going to back down from it. That's a shot I know I can make. I hit him a little higher than I expected, but I trained myself to be able to make a shot like that and have the equipment and the confidence in my equipment to do that. And that's a lethal shot. It's a difficult shot from a tree stand. But I'll do it again. And, that same year I shot 2 deer at 54 yards, and I train that. I don't train a ton. Like I don't I've told David, like, I'm not the guy that's going to go shoot a volume of arrows. I shoot little quality arrows. That's what I do.
Yep.
And because I'm a guy that will definitely create habits the more I shoot. If I go out and shoot 30 arrows a night, I'll create a habit in those 30 arrows. That's probably not a good habit. So I'll go and shoot 5 or 10 good ones and call her good. So I did catch a lot of flack for that deer. I'll do it again. Just because it's, that opportunity at 11 yards, and he picked the sticks on my tree, and then looks up and he sees me and I'm at full draw, and he just gave me everything. And I'm like, I mean, this is a gimme. This is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And, it's just one of those things that definitely, like you said, if you wouldn't have, there's like 2 instances this year, you probably would have had deer. But you decided to take up that shot that you could make, and you don't have them. So definitely that's something that I've learned myself to take that first good shot. Like, not a lot of people will say 54 yards is unethical, and probably in some aspects it is, but I feel like I can make that shot 10 out of 10 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's it's certainly it varies hunter to hunter, and everybody has to make that own, distinction for themselves. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what's ethical for one guy is not necessarily the same for the other guy. The guy that puts more time and energy into preparing for difficult situations, it's different for that guy than the guy that picks up his bow 2 weeks before the season and fires a
Right.
few arrows at 20 yards,
Yep.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Andy, I want to wrap this up. We're at 2 hours. I know I meant to do this before at the beginning, but David and I are doing a question. We haven't really named the thing what we do. It's a kind of like a would you rather or what would you do? And we usually do it with just him and I, but I have a question that I want to pose to you as well. And I'm going to pose to David. He has no idea what this question is. Obviously, you don't. Um, I want your honest opinion. David, Andy's going to go first. He's the guest, but David, you think about your answer. Then he'll have a question that he'll pose to us. So if you're good with it, I want to shoot it to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
as long as Andy doesn't take my answer, we're good.
Okay, this question was actually submitted by a listener, which I saw it and I'm like, this is an unbelievable question. So it's, would you rather hunt deer over 140 inches on public and deal with a lot of pressure, or deer around 120 inches with little to no pressure from other hunters on like private or public? I guess he doesn't say, but I'm going to say private.
Yeah, that is a good question.
Made me think.
Yeah. I almost want to say, and I'm not thinking of the unpressured buck as like a private farm, like where no one's on there. I'm
In
visualizing,
general.
I'm visualizing an area that just doesn't have a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and I almost want to pick that because I feel like I don't get that very much.
Yeah.
I'm used to dealing with a lot of people and a lot of pressure, and granted, I think being from Michigan and other pressured states, I think that really creates, if you can do it in a state like that, I feel like you build a lot of skills and a thought process that you otherwise wouldn't if you hunt in a pressured state. You see a lot of Michigan guys or PA guys or whoever, pressured state guys, and then they go to other states and it's like they do really, really well, But you've also seen a lot of really good hunters, well-known hunters that are considered some of the best in the world come to Michigan multiple times, and nobody's killed anything good yet. They even had the public land challenge here with all those guys. And I think Joe Rentmeester killed a nice 2-year-old buck.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
That's the proof is in the pudding. And there's other states like that. There's other pressured areas. There's pressured areas in great states.
Yeah.
So I do think I feel like hunting in Michigan has really prepared me really well to just kind of travel anywhere and be pretty dangerous.
Man, it's crazy. I just had this conversation with a buddy of mine and he asked me the same thing. And I said, I am so happy that I grew up in Michigan because I feel like I can go just about anywhere and get on deer. Not to say that the guy from any other state in Iowa or Illinois couldn't, but the thing is, those guys are going to come to Michigan. They're going to be looking for a deer that doesn't exist, in my opinion. And I think they're going to hunt, all of us, we've hunted out of state. Like when I go to Iowa, I hunt totally different than I hunt here in Michigan. Like just 7-year-old deer exist there and they do things that 1-year-olds do here. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, it's noon and you're out in the middle of a field. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, they would come here and expect deer to behave like they do in those unpressured states, and they just don't. And the reason the unpressured one is attractive to me, even though it's a small buck, is it's fun to see deer act like deer. And a lot of these Michigan bucks that I've taken outside of the rut, they're last light bucks,
Yep.
and you got to be in really tight to bedding and you're bumping deer getting in, or it's a really difficult thing to pull off. And I think a lot of things need to be dialed in when a buck is just not moving that far in daylight.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, in some of these other states where there's less pressure, of course, they feel more comfortable getting up early, moving a little further. Not saying it's easy. It's not easy. None of them are easy. But you just, you have more targets. Yeah, they move farther. They're more susceptible to calling. There's just a lot of things that kind of more in the hunter's favor. So I think I would go with the unpressured deer, just because it is fun to go to some of these other states where it's a little less pressured and see deer act like deer, have them come into calls and rattling and seeing bucks fight. And, that's really cool. I told my buddy, Dustin, I would rather shoot a Pope and Young like size 125-inch buck that I see bedded out in a CRP grass, and I have an opportunity to go up and sneak and shoot him in his bed with my bow. I'd rather shoot that than a 160 that, I have coming into my food plot routinely. Personally, like that hunt is, the way that hunt transpired has more value to me, as a person emotionally, like inside as a hunter, than the higher scoring deer killed in maybe not as exciting of a way, or in a way that maybe doesn't take as much skill. That's just me personally.
I get that. I like that answer. David, what do you got?
That Andy's answer was really good. I probably won't be able to back mine up that good, but gosh, I can see arguments for both sides, right? But I'm gonna go the flip side of what Andy said. I'm gonna take the larger deer with the more pressured land, and this is gonna be simply because that's kind of the name of the game already for me. Finding the biggest deer I can come summertime. Whether I have to knock on someone's door to go get permission, or if that happened to be on public land. It's kind of already the name of the game that I play right now. So it's probably somewhat similar to what Andy said, but like you said, he took the other answer because it's something that he doesn't commonly get to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like question. That. So David, what do you got for yours?
All right. I'm going to give you two options. Okay. You want something?
Multiple choice.
Yeah. Well, something, somewhat a little more serious. You want something kind of fun.
Andy, you pick whatever you want, serious or fun.
Let's go fun.
All right, that's it. I was hoping for that one. All right, so you're in your favorite state and you have an all-day hunt planned, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you can only take one of these with you for the day. Your options are: you can take toilet paper, food, something to drink, or your cell phone with you. You can only take one for the all-day hunt. What are you taking?
I already know. Not even a question.
That's a good one.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't. It's toss up, but
I would force myself to take just water.
Just water.
Yeah, that's a boring answer, but I would force myself. I would struggle without water all day. I really would. But I could tough it out without food. I could tough it out without my phone. TP, use a stick.
That's
a stick. I thought we were going to sacrifice a sock or something.
Oh, boy.
Or a sock.
Or a sock. Use a stick. I like that. Whatever.
Yeah. Whatever. What do you got, Aaron?
Phone. I got to. I can deal without food for a long time and water. My phone is, my attention span is, it is what it sucks because I never used to be this way until, you got to think, like, I am 35, but when I was in high school, I didn't have a cell phone. Like I still, like phones weren't a thing, they were just coming about. But like now my phone is my life. Like everything is
Yeah.
on my phone. But I would say it's a close one between phone or food. A good sandwich really can break up a slow day.
Yeah.
Just I need something. But I think the phone edges it out just because
Yeah.
of I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just what
There's
it is. I guess.
no right or wrong answer. It just something I was trying to
Yeah.
think about one day.
I'm the type of guy that goes to the stand with like 3 jetpacks to boost my phone up and it's like, oh yeah. But cool, good question. I like that.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, Andy. I know you wanted to plug some things here at the end here, so the floor is yours, man. So first of all, I guess anybody that can, wants to see more of what you're doing and everything like that, where can they find that?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much just Instagram, bow hunting dad on Instagram there. And I don't post a ton, but I share some hunts on there and, sometimes some scouting stuff. I do some like prototype testing for, tethered and first light and stuff. So I'll often kind of help them out with some posts, and I really like their gear and I've been using it a long time, so I really like those guys. But um I am I'm working on a project with it's a new company called Hunt Better, and they're on Instagram, and it's really cool. There's a few people involved that that you guys will know. Garrett Prawl is one,
Mm-hmm.
DIY sportsman. Jared Schaefer, he's the guy from Tethered. Both great guys, and another guy named Mike Funderburk. But we're trying to offer some unique um, content and perspectives. There's going to be some live streams, which isn't anything new, but like some live stream kind of podcast format. But it's going to allow some of the members at Hunt Better to have more of like a one-on-one, or a more personal interaction with maybe some of their favorite hunters, like Jared Scheffler or Aaron Warbritton or whatever. You want to ask them, you have a question that you've always wanted to ask them personally. This is going to be an opportunity to do that, to ask maybe some things that you've always wanted to know, or just a specific question. My favorite part and what I'm most excited about is there's going to be a section that we're calling Hunt Breakdown, where we're going to go through specific hunts that we were successful on, and really break it down, the intangibles of why this hunt was successful, what went down, show the map, show exactly what transpired throughout that hunt, why we think it transpired, what were the key takeaways. I think that's going to be an awesome learning tool. And for me, the type of person I am, though, that's the best learning tool. Like when I
Yeah.
see a video where they do that and they're showing mapping and they're showing what the buck did and what the wind was doing and what their approach was and why they picked this stand location, what the sign said, I just love that. And
Agreed.
I'm really excited to, share some of my hunts. Like I don't do a lot of filming. I have some hunts on film, so there won't be a lot of like film stuff from me personally, but I'm excited to kind of go through some of my hunts that I think I learned a lot on. Garrett is going to do some of his, Jared's going to do some of his, and then we're going to, try to get a lot of other guys to kind of just, pick some really relevant hunts that they've had, in their hunting career, and go through it and kind of tell the story. So it's a really good learning tool. And the last thing is a really unique piece called Conversations, and John Eberhart and I did one, and it's basically, it's not a podcast necessarily. It's more, it's in person. It's very personal. It's two hunters talking about hunting for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is. We did it by a campfire. There was no host. It was just two guys talking, see where the conversation goes. And
Mm-hmm.
man, was that fun.
I
You
bet.
know, it wasn't like ask question, answer, you know, tell me about your season. It was just you let it flow organically. And I think I think uh, a really neat piece of content that I think people enjoy.
Yeah.
But the
That's
main
cool.
thing with Hunt Better is like we're trying to preserve the hunting culture. Like um, you know, with things changing so rapidly with technology and whatnot. This isn't an anti-technology thing at all, but what it is we really want to preserve the culture of hunting and the scouting and the woodsmanship. When you listen to a lot of um, hunting stories these days, there's less and less of that.
Yeah.
Of reading the sign of what the buck was doing, and more of this was my trail cam picture, and this was my food plot, or this was my bait pile, and this was my cell cam picture. And we really want to focus in on more of the woodsmanship and try to keep that culture alive. That's what excites me when if I hear a story that doesn't have any substance to it about scouting and doing some legwork and really trying to figure that out by reading sign and learning the woods and the terrain. Like, I lose interest really quick. So it's important to me just to kind of keep that, that culture of hunting and scouting and woodsmanship alive. I think that's it's something we don't want to lose. So that's it's kind of the main focus with Hunt Better. So I'm happy to be helping them out and be a part of that. So hopefully it'll be interesting.
Heck yeah, man. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Where can people find that? Just online? Is it a website, or where's that going to be at?
Yep, it's on Instagram. You have an Instagram page, and then there's a website called huntbetter.us.
Mm-hmm.
You can go on there and check it out. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We're not trying to turn into anything big, but we're just trying to provide something valuable, and we want to have a lot of guys on there. We'd love to have maybe you guys on with a breakdown the hunt of a hunt where you learned a lot that was really meaningful, or even have you guys on a live stream. Like, you guys are both successful hunters. A lot of people can learn from you guys. So that's our goal, is to have the guys out there that are really working, true woodsmen, the guys that are really earning those deer and working hard, and can do it across the board in a lot of different areas. So
Heck yeah, man. That's really cool.
Yep.
Good deal, man. Well, honestly, I want to be conscious of your time. You've given us a lot tonight, and I'm greatly appreciate that. And thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. It was fun, man. Glad kind of go through that season and then relive it. And now I'm kind of refocused on all the things that need attention. So it was good for me too. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thank you. And yeah, good luck this next year. I'm sure we'll talk and see each other before then. But yeah, greatly appreciated.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, Andy.
Yep.